Hello, welcome to the channel. My name is Josh and you're watching Our History. Today we're going over part 3 of our series in the Xhosa Wars. So if you enjoyed this, please be sure to like. And if you're new here, consider smashing the subscribe button. If this isn't your first rodeo and you haven't showed some love to the subscribe button yet, now is your opportunity. It really helps the channel out. Thank you very much for watching. The Eighth War, which lasted from 1850 to 1853. The background. Governor Harry Smith ordered the forced removal of large numbers of Xhosa across the Kiskama River, leading to overcrowding and hardship for refugees who were displaced from their homes. Additionally, these Xhosa who remained in the colony were relocated to towns and encouraged to adopt European lifestyles, which further eroded their traditional beliefs and practices. Governor Harry Smith annexed the independent Orange Free State and executed Boer resistance leaders, which led to significant resentment from the burghers of the Cape Colony. Additionally, to cover the mounting expenses of war and administration, Smith imposed exorbitant taxes on the local people of the frontier. Despite these measures, Smith also cut the Cape's standing forces to less than 5,000 men, which left the region vulnerable to attacks from neighboring groups. In June 1850, a harsh winter and severe drought hit the Cut River region, causing hardship for both settlers and Xhosa people. In response, British Governor of the Cape Colony, Sir Harry Smith, ordered the removal of many Xhosa squatters from the Cut River area. Mlanjeni's War, was also known as the Eighth Frontier War, was a conflict between the British colonists and the Xhosa people in the Cape Colony of South Africa. The war lasted from 1850 to 1853. The prophet Mlanjeni emerged amongst the homeless Xhosa community and predicted that they would be impervious to the colonists' bullets. This inspired a large number of Xhosa people to leave the town's colony and unify in the tribal areas. The Outbreak of War in December 1850. In response to unrest sparked by Mlanjeni's preaching, Governor Sir Harry Smith believed that the chiefs were to blame and sought to hold them accountable. When Sandile, a prominent chief, refused to attend a meeting, Governor Smith deposed him and declared him a fugitive. On the 24th of December, a British detachment of 650 men was attacked by Xhosa warriors, resulting in 42 casualties. The following day, apparently friendly Xhosa entered towns to partake in Christmas festivities when they attacked and killed settlers who had invited them into their houses. The bulk of the Ngqika joined the war with this attack. Initial Xhosa victories. During the time when the governor was stationed at Fort Cox, the Xhosa forces launched an attack on the colony, cutting off his communication to the outside world. The Xhosa burned down several British military villages on the frontier and captured the post at Line Drift. Furthermore, the Khoi living in the Blinkwater River Valley and Cut River settlement revolted, led by Chief Hermanus Matruus. They managed to capture Fort Armstrong and many members of the Kaffir police, which was a paramilitary police force the British had established to combat cattle theft, deserted their posts and joined the Xhosa war parties. It appeared that not only were the Xhosa at war with the British, but the Khoi people in the Eastern Cape were also fighting against the British. Harry Smith, the British governor of the Cape Colony, faced significant challenges in his administration due to his policies that made him enemies of most local groups. His severe treatment of the Boer commandos, the burghers and the Fengu angered them, leading to a loss of support. Even Khoi, who were part of the Cape's local defences, turned against him. When Smith finally escaped Fort Cox with the help of the Cape Mounted Riflemen, some of them refused to fight for him due to his previous actions. British counterattack, January 1851. After their initial successes, the Xhosa tribe faced a series of setbacks. Their forces were repulsed in attacks on Fort White and Fort Hare, and an offensive on Fort Beaufort resulted in the death of leader Hermanus. As a result, the Cape government agreed to enlist a force of local gunmen, primarily Khoi, to help defend the frontier. This allowed Imperial troops to focus on offensive actions against the Xhosa. In January, the British received reinforcements from Cape Town, which aided in their resupply of garrisons at Fort White, Fort Cox and Fort Hare. The force under Colonel Mackinnon was successful in driving north from King Williamstown, and the remaining rebel forces, led by Willem Uithalel, were driven west towards the Amatola Mountains. British troops continued to arrive over the following months, increasing the number of troops fighting against the rebel forces. The additional forces enabled Smith to lead sweeps across the frontier country. The reinforcements allowed heavily outnumbered British to hold their ground and regain control of the region. HMS Birkenhead was a British ship that sank off the coast of Gansbaai in 1852. The ship was carrying reinforcements to the war upon the request of Sir Harry Smith. As the ship started to sink, the men, who were mostly new recruits, remained standing silently in rank, allowing the women and children to be loaded into the lifeboats. Despite the efforts of the crew, over 300 people lost their lives in the disaster. Final stages of the conflict. Makoma, a notable insurgent leader, and his followers established themselves at the Voorsteed Waterkloof, where they launched raids on adjacent farms, plundering and burning homesteads. They had a stronghold on Mount Misery, a natural fortress located on a narrow neck between the Waterkloof and Harry's Kloof, which aided their efforts. The conflict continued for 2 years and saw Makoma leading an attack on Fort Fordyce, where he inflicted significant losses on the forces of Sir Harry Smith. In early 1852, the British government made a decision to replace Sir Harry Smith as governor of the Cape Colony due to his poor governance, which had led to widespread violence in the region. George Cathcart was appointed as his successor on March of that year. Under Cathcart's leadership, the British authorities launched a series of aggressive campaigns to apprehend the rebels. Over the next 6 months, the countryside was scored for those who had taken up arms against the British. Finally, in February 1853, Sandile and the other rebel chiefs surrendered to the British authorities, bringing an end to the conflict. The Eighth Frontier War, which occurred in the mid-19th century, was one of the most devastating and prolonged conflicts in the series of Xhosa Wars. The conflict lasted for more than 2 years and resulted in complete subjugation of the Ciskei Xhosa. Cattle Killing Movement, 1856 to 1858. The Great Cattle Killing was a significant event that occurred amongst the Xhosa people in 1856. It began as a millennialist movement that was based on the belief that spirits of their ancestors would return, bringing with them a new era of prosperity. The Xhosa people of South Africa were facing numerous hardships, including disease and drought. In the midst of this, a 16-year-old Xhosa prophetess named Nongqawuse emerged and claimed to have received a message from the ancestors of the Xhosa people. According to her message, the ancestors would return from the afterlife, bringing prosperity and deliverance to the Xhosa people, but only if they destroyed all their means of subsistence. This meant that they had to kill all their cattle and burn all of their crops. Initially, the Xhosa people ignored the prophecy, but when the Xhosa king Sarhili began to kill his own cattle, more and more people began to believe in her gift of communication with the ancestors. They too killed their cattle and destroyed their crops, leading to a famine and economic collapse. The Cape Colony authorities feared chaos and unsuccessfully pleaded with the Xhosa to ignore the prophecy. Nongqawuse was even arrested for causing disturbance. The Xhosa nation believed in the prediction of the return of the ancestors on the 18th of February. As a result, King Sarhili ordered the destruction of the food sources throughout the country. The Xhosa people followed the order, leading to a shortage of essential resources. Unfortunately, the predicted event did not occur, and the Xhosa nation was left struggling to survive amidst widespread famine. By 1858, the killings had resulted in the starvation of thousands and spread of diseases. As a result, the settlers gained power over the remaining Xhosa, who were forced to turn to the colonists for food, blankets, and other relief. This further weakened the Xhosa nation and solidified British control over the region. The repercussions of the cattle killings were long-lasting, and it took several years for the Xhosa to recover from the devastating impact of the event.